Hmm. We are live. Let's see how long we can go before our first set of eyes starts looking at us. There we go. Well, I'm going to get some of the plugs out of the way. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lou Perez podcast, my monthly Ask Me Anything. And today I'm really happy with today and looking forward to it because I'm going to be joined by a hilarious comedian, but I'm going to bring him in a little later. To kick things off, just want to tell you a little bit about my sponsors. If you guys are into cold brew, please check out Black Organic Cold Brew, BLVCKBREW.com. If you use the promo code LOU, that's LOU, you get free shipping. And if you guys are into CBD products, check out PalomaVerdeCBD.com. If you use promo code LOU over there, you can get, I believe it's 25% off orders over $75. So I would highly recommend you guys heading over there if that is your thing. You have to excuse me. I am broadcasting from from the top floor, kind of the attic of my house, and there is no air conditioning. So right now there's a lot of shine happening on my face. And I don't want you to think that I look like this because I'm in terrible shape. I'm getting back into shape, but this is what you have to deal with. Looking at my mug. And so if you guys have any questions, I want you to hit me up in the comment section. Have quite a bit to talk about. One of the announcements that I was going to make to the world and to all you guys is to let you know that over the next few months, I'm actually going to be logging off of most social media. And by most social media, I mean Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I can't believe that I'm on TikTok, but I'm on TikTok too. I'm going to be logging off for good reason, because I'm going to be working on a book. So I'm going to be writing a book, or I am currently writing a book, and I need to devote real time to it. So as much fun as I have, being online and taking part in all the fun, it's definitely a time suck. And it could easily derail me from my project, which is getting a book written over the coming months. So if you guys want to be a part of my journey and be with me along the way, you can join the community over on Locals, the louperez.locals.com community. And if you head over there, I'm probably going to be kind of speaking exclusively through that, letting you guys know everything that I'm going through as I sit in this very hot attic with my face sweating, trying to figure out how to write a book. So that's where I am on that. We have one comment coming in. Let's see. David Arias says, "How's the outlining coming?" Already there, man. Already done. Done and done. No more outlining. That was the easiest portion. Doing a lot of cutting and pasting. But right now we have a few eyes on us, so I'd like to bring in my special guest for the evening. Here he is. This is a comedian extraordinaire, Mr. Joe DeVito. Joe, thank you for joining me.
Hey, good to be here, Lou. Good to see you.
Good. And you look like you have air conditioning wherever you are.
I have not turned it on yet, but I do have that option. Unlike you, look at you. You look like a Latinx Anne Frank in your attic there, sweating it out.
That's right. This is what a Latin person looks like right before they expire, and then they become Latinx.
Yeah.
So that's what I got going. Oh man, you just said I have the option of air conditioning, Lou. I have the option of that. Oh God, man, to have choices in life, that would be fantastic. Joe, so one of the great times that I had being on a friend's show was when I was on Andrew Heaton's show some months back, and you were on it as well. That was a lot of fun. And Since then, you hit one of these amazing milestones. Your special on Dry Bar Comedy
Yes.
hit like, is it 2 million views on YouTube?
It's actually on YouTube. I think it's 2.3 million. On Facebook, 3.5 million. It's
Oh my God.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm very, very pleased.
Yeah. And how did you get involved with Dry Bar Comedy in the first place?
Well, Dry Bar is very interesting. It for people who've never heard of it, it's a company that puts out clean comedy specials, and they were being marketed to, I think, Christian entertainment outlets. So because I can work clean when I need to, my act, for the most part, is clean, because I do corporates and all that pre-2020 stuff when I was making a living just doing stand-up. They'd reached out to me and I said, yeah, let me give this a shot. And I flew out to Provo, Utah, and I taped 2 sets and they put it together into one like 40-minute-ish piece. And I was happy with it. I burned off a lot of material that I was kind of looking to move on from. I did some things that maybe I don't do in the clubs anymore. And they pay you up front as if it's kind of like doing a club weekend. So there was no financial exposure on my part. What they did say was, if you hit these benchmarks in terms of views, you start to get paid residuals. And looking at the benchmarks at the time, I thought, well, these are so lofty. I'm never going to hit these. Mm. And then we have a pandemic where everyone is trapped inside looking for things to look at. So,
yeah,
all it took was the death of millions and the collapse of Western society. But I got residuals. I'm getting some checks in the mail. But seriously, though, it was a good experience, and it's really been nice, the feedback that I've gotten on it. I can, you know how when you do something like that and then you can't watch it because it's kind of gross to watch yourself. But when I can look at it now, I'm happy with it. I'm like, yeah, this is a good comedy special. It's funny. It's funny at a good steady clip.
Yeah, and I remember it seemed like Dry Bar just started showing up not too long ago on my Facebook feed, and I was like, what is this? And for those of you who haven't checked it out, I mean, for one, I have to say is like the production value is excellent. They are professional. They're top notch. Everything that they that they have going for them, and also there's this really there's this I don't know, there's this element to, it's almost edgy that it's clean.
Yeah, it stands out.
Yeah, it really does, and it's sort of like, oh wow, this is comedy that you could watch with your parents and not feel weird. You can watch it with your younger kids and not feel weird. And it seems like I don't know, maybe because I'm like a product of like the 80s and 90s, where I think like the first comedian me and my brothers ever quoted was Dice. So it's so I'm coming from a different generation.
Yeah, that's the number one thing that I hear from the fans is they're so relieved that it's not that there's not the cursing and talking about I guess even R-rated topics. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I mean, it's in Provo, Utah. They're Mormons, so they even said they asked that we not disparage marriage. Want a whole lot of jokes about drugs and drinking because it doesn't really relate to them. But the audiences were great.
Yeah.
And I think where I'm at now, I almost prefer that because for a couple of reasons. I want to hear good jokes. And when you work clean, it does make you have to rely on the strength of the joke a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And I like dirty jokes. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me, but I like jokes. I like strong jokes. And I think connected to that is what's going on in our culture. And me being older now, how I've moved away. I've come to terms with not having to be hip as far as what people under the age of 30 are doing. And it's nice because I look at what is being promoted by the comedy business and I think, well, that's not for me. So where would I go to laugh at something? And I think this is where you end up. You go and if you look at something like Comedy Central wishes they could get the number of views and impressions that these guys make. I mean, they really do a good job of promoting it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like I'm 39 and it's almost like you go. I've been to bars like with my wife, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. Everybody's a bro who's 26 And I'm like, and it's not even necessarily like, oh, they're being jerks. It's like, no, they're all 25 and 26 years old. I don't belong here. This is a different vibe. And I think it's kind of a similar thing in comedy in a way, where it's sort of like watching younger comics work, and it's sort of like, oh, I get it. I get where you are in life, where the stories that you're telling, or, you know, things that you're picking up, and it's just not necessarily my speed. And it's not like I'm saying you shouldn't do that or don't do that. It's just,
it's
I'm
not
just
for
different.
you.
It's just not, it's just not for me. Yeah.
Well, I know that when I used to stop in a lot of the open mics, because I teach stand-up writing, so I go check in on my students and stuff. And I would watch what younger comics are talking about, and I would start to really I wasn't so much laughing as I was concerned for them, because their lives did not sound very happy. The guys mostly talked about being socially awkward, watching video games, pornography, and smoking pot. And the young women told stories about binge drinking and depression and gross, unsatisfying sex. And I thought, wow, I guess almost like paternal instincts making me want to say that, I know you're supposed to talk about your life, but I hope that is not what your life is like. Yeah.
Yeah. When I lived out in LA for close to 4 years, and I met my wife to be out in New York, and then she moved out to LA with me. And so she would come to like all the shows that I would do, you know, and even I used to host sort of a hybrid show and then an open mic. And she had like a very similar, you know, reaction to a lot of the comedians, where it was sort of like, you're making me feel so bad for you that I can't even laugh. It's not even, it's not endearing, you know? And there is something to a comedian who's able to relay, you know, fuck ups from their life, but do it in a way where you're like, but they're in control of it. You know, they're in control of their life, as opposed to, let me just keep revealing this trauma that I'm going through, and, you know, hope that, I don't know. Are they hoping that someone out there is gonna, you know, like Joe's gonna come up to them and be like, hey, look, we don't have to talk about that third beat, but we should really talk about, you know, the callback that is your life and what went wrong, and let's get it back on track or something.
Yeah, it's the issue to be addressed is a little bit deeper than set up punch. Right. It's kind of like, what are you doing? Yeah, and it's very interesting what you learn from watching stand up, especially at the beginner level. I think you learn a lot more from watching people who are unpolished, because you see it in a more raw form. And I know what I've learned from watching that is self-deprecating can very easily cross that line into, you're just bumming everybody out, and you don't need to be telling everybody. And I call it spraying yourself at people. And I think for some people, it seems like that's the goal, is to just inflict this opening of yourself. But to me, it's almost like making people watch you trim your nose hair or wipe your ass. It's like, oh, all right, well, you did reveal an intimate thing, but good God, did that need to be done? What did you get out of it?
Right. There have been a number of times when I've done sort of these like variety show, like we'll call them like mix shows, where you have stand up, you'd have some people do, you know, sort of like sketch comedy characters or scenes, and then you'd have storytelling too. And I forget who it was who described storytelling as sort of, you know, it's stand up, but you don't have any punchlines whatsoever. so it's, you know, and I can't tell you the amount of times that I would have to follow somebody, women in particular, who would, you know, use their time to talk very openly and graphically about terrible things that have happened to them, like sexual assault. And I did one show where this poor woman got up and talked about her sexual assault, and then I have to follow her. And I was planning to tell a story about how when I got out of a 5-year relationship, I was single and went a little crazy with my dating stuff. And I ended up buying like vibrators. And it's like, oh man, following someone who's like, yeah, I was raped, and then the first thing I have to say is, wow, dating is hard.
I know, you feel like an idiot.
Yeah, it's really, it's tough, and thankfully there wasn't, a lot riding on that show, but yeah, I've had some experiences where it's sort of like, it would have been better if I went first, if you,
Yeah, those are the
let me
kind
at
of
least
shows
go
where,
first.
well, I've had to follow acts like that, and usually what happens is I would say to the host, "Can you do a little time before you bring me up?" And they go, "No
Yeah.
problem." They go, and then they go up and they're like, "Your next performer," and you're like, "Damn it!" Like, give them a little palate cleanser.
Yeah.
The storytelling thing is interesting. I explored that a little bit over the past couple of years, because I'd seen so many comics who would say, I'm more of a storyteller, when the truth was they just were lazy and didn't feel like editing and they were long-winded. But when you see someone who's really good at telling a story, you're just amazed at what they can get into 5 minutes. It's like watching a play in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought, well, that's a pretty interesting skill set. I'd like to figure that out. And the reverse of that is I have a friend who's been into the storytelling world for a while, and she took one of my stand-up classes, and she just wanted to punch up. I mean, it was a bit about her mother dying, and when she went back to storytelling, having done the punch-up, it was mind-blowing how great her performance was. So I think you can learn a little bit from both of them, but some of the storytelling, it just is someone's going up and sharing like an awful vignette, and I don't know if there was any art to it or any technique. It just was, it was very honest, but I don't think that's all you need.
Yeah. And it also, you start wondering why, why are these people here, especially at mics? I would often have very long gaps between performances, and I would like book a show and be like, okay, I got to get up there and just get any time that I want. So every time that I was going up at a mic, it was with the idea of, okay, I'm rusty. I need to just be able to hold the mic and have words come out of my mouth. I need to be able to like riff a little bit and, take whatever's in the room to jog memories of bits and, and that sort of thing. And then I would see, a number of people getting up there to do like what you said, which is sort of, spraying, their traumatic experiences. And then other people was sort of like, oh, this is kind of their hangout. This is a social thing. And for those if anybody's out there who hasn't, tried stand up or is looking to do it, not saying there's anything wrong with, any of this stuff. It's just, that's what you're going to have to deal with your peers, when you have to, it's an hour and a half in and you're waiting to do your 3 minutes and somebody's up there, and they're, and they're making callbacks to, an earlier mic that nobody even was at. It's like, what's going on here? Let's see. We have some, let's see. Bobcat asks, okay, real question. How do you go from saying a few funny things to writing a stand-up show?
Oh, it's a good question.
Do you want to take it? Do you want to take that one? Yeah.
I think that is what separates. I always tell people that the stand-up comedy pyramid has a very wide base, that there are a lot of people who try it, and most people wash out within the first 2 years, because that's when you learn, oh, once you stand up and face an audience, it's a whole different experience than being funny with your friends. So I think what you do to make that step is you have to be as prepared as possible. So I'm amazed when I talk to newer comics and I'll say, well, show me the document where you've compiled all your bits. And they'll say, oh, I don't have anything written down. And I think, well, here is the first challenge for you, is to, you have to write things down. You have to edit. You have to do all this stuff. And the more work you put in, the more natural it will seem when you're on stage. Some people think that stifles, you're just going to go. I remember when I used to do the amateur shows, and all the nerds like me would be walking around looking at our pads and making notes. And there was always a guy with a beer in his hand who was like, oh, no, I'm just going to go up and wing it. And it was always a bloodbath, because once you face the audience, it's just not the same. So I would say the first thing you need to do is write down everything. And when you're doing that initial phase of writing down everything, don't worry if it's funny yet. You just need to get it on the page. And then I say figure out what's on your mind and how you want to talk about it, and then worry about making it funny. But to sit there with a pen thinking what's funny, it's too much pressure to put on yourself. It's the wrong time to ask that question. That's what I think.
Yeah. Let's see. Daniel BC says, Joe, first saw him on Red Eye.
Good old Red Eye on Fox News Channel, a classic program.
There we go. And have you been doing stuff on Fox
I
since
have.
then? Well, obviously.
Yeah. I work on Greg Gutfeld's new show.
Nice.
The #1 show in its time slot on cable.
What time? What time is it
It's on 11 p.m. Monday through Friday. About 2 months ago, they made the jump from it just being a Saturday show. And it's just a very silly talk show. It's a good time. I do some writing for it, and I'm a regular panelist on it. They treat me very well over there. It's very interesting what's happened in the political realm, that if you had said to me that I would have like a little home base at Fox News Channel, I would have thought, well, what do you mean? But I'm seeing these weird intersecting circles of people I meet through there, people from Compound Media, people who are free speech advocates, and within those circles, people who like to lift weights, Jordan Peterson, people who eat red meat. Like, there's all these weird libertarian thought threads that go through that. I mean, it's kind of how I met you. I mean, it was strange when I did the podcast with you. I thought, oh, I already know this guy because I was watching your, what was it? We the People? Was that what you're doing?
We the Internet. Yeah.
We the Internet. Yeah. And I thought, oh, okay, I like this guy's stuff. So there's definitely a strange, slightly right of center libertarian kind of comedy that's out there. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I've noticed that there's something to be said about being able to talk to people and not worrying every sentence that you utter that somehow you're going to offend the person, or they're going to, possibly use this against you in some way. The social aspect, the very, simple idea of being able to talk to people. I never realized the value of that until, over the past, few years, where it was sort of like, oh, well, like you said, like with the Fox stuff, it's like, man, if I was the kid in college and someone would tell me that, oh, I would like a bunch of people who appear regularly on Fox, I'd be like, come on, man, there's absolutely no way. But, the platforms are definitely there. And thankfully so, because it's sort of like, I mean, if they weren't there, it's like, where else would you be? It's sort of, I don't know.
You're right about the ability to have a conversation. I think that is the dangerous thing that we see going on, that words are being bent and manipulated they no longer have meaning. They're just used as traps. So I feel like with you and the people that I talk to, that I choose to interact with, you can say what's on your mind and you don't have to worry that. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of at Planet Fitness, the lunk alarm. Are you familiar with the lunk alarm?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've never set it off, but I know what you're talking about.
It's if your weights hit the floor, this alarm goes off. Well, to me, it's like, are we here to lift some goddamn weights or not? So sometimes a weight's going to hit the floor, and you can't have a siren go off. You just have to be able to deal with it. And I think, especially for comedy, I'll give you an example. I was at a show Clayton Fletcher used to do at the Greenwich, and Clayton's a libertarian-minded guy I've known for years. And we were in the backstage area listening to all the new comics talk about how they were so afraid they might say something that would get them in trouble. And we couldn't believe it, because when we started, every comic was irreverent. That's what comedy was. You broke balls. You said inappropriate things. You had strange, unacceptable opinions. That's what it was. And to think that now you're supposed to try and create something with that weighing on you, I just don't think it works that way. I think we're going to look back at a lot of what's passing for art these days, the way we look at Soviet posters. And we're going to say, oh, that's ugly and formulaic. Well, that's what they felt they had to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I sort of trying to think. I've had a number of people reach out to me, say over the past, 5 years. So before I was doing the stuff with We the Internet, before I was doing like political and cultural satire, I was basically doing, regular stand-up comedy and also, and mostly sketch comedy, producing videos. And so there are a bunch of people who know me, before, if you want to call it a shift that I made in my focus on my comedy. And many of these people who I haven't spoken to in a very long time have reached out to me and over things that I've posted and said, I'm disappointed in you. You're better than this.
Yeah.
Right. And there were a few people in particular where it was sort of like they were incapable of imagining that I could have been really kind to them, that I could have helped them out whenever I could, that I could have been the type of person that they enjoyed being around. But also I'm the guy who thinks that, I think people have a right to arm themselves. I do not like the amount of money I pay in taxes. The idea that you can't hold these disparate, views and still be a good person, or the idea that, if it really was that big of a problem, we could talk about it. I'm open to talking to you about it, and sharing a beer, or getting a cup of coffee and all that. And that's been one of the really troubling things. It's just this sort of like all or nothing tribalism, where, there's so much, Joe, like so many things about you that I don't know what Joe thinks about this. I don't know what Joe thinks about that, but you know what? Hey, if we agree on some of this other stuff, and he has interesting things to say, there's a good chance that if we have a disagreement, you're going to have an interesting thing to say or an interesting perspective. I'm open to hearing that. Yeah. The idea I'm going to close the door completely and just be like, you know what? I really like Joe's comedy special, but you know what? I'm out. This is a step too far for me.
Yeah. It's a strange kind of intolerance that, I've had, congrats if you can say to the person, let's talk about it. I've even tried, can we not talk about it? Can we just talk about something else? And they won't let it go. And I've had these situations with people where I've said, look, you and I clearly don't agree on this, and it's very stressful for us to keep going like this. Can we just change the subject? Right. And you see, like, they can't let it go, because I think it's become a form of religious fundamentalism, where if you don't agree with them, it's not just a disagreement. You've urinated on their view of the world, and they can't allow that other opinion to exist, even if it only exists in your mind, unspoken. They can't allow it. And I think it was Jonathan Haidt maybe did a study where they said if they asked conservatives, can you describe the liberal point of view without insults? Can you tell us what the good liberal point of view is? And they could kind of cobble together something. And if they said to people on the left, can you tell us what the positive conservative point of view is? They could not do it. They couldn't accept that any of it had any value. And to me, that shows you've got some sort of, you've given up on reason. You're just going on pure religious fervor, which it never ends well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find it's a big problem where sort of the people that you describe who just can't let it go, where they desperately want to win the debate, but they don't know how to debate. And they have never, I forget how many years it was. Man, it was probably like 5 years ago, where I was working on a video, and the DP found out I was libertarian.
Yeah.
Right? And we're shooting. We're taking a break from shooting. Like, I hired this guy to do the job of holding a camera, setting up a shot, and doing all that. And he said, I'd like to debate you on libertarianism. And I said, well, what debate? Like, I'd be up to, I don't know how much of a debater I am. I'd be up to talk to you about it. And he said, well, he asked me a question, blah, blah. And I said, well, I'm just, for me, it's has to do with the non-aggression principle and blah, blah, blah. And we sort of split for the day. We came back to shoot another day. And he said, oh yeah, I looked up that non-aggression principle thing. And so are you saying that you're against all government? And
roads, don't you like roads?
Yeah, exactly. And but it was this thing. It was this thing where, wait a minute. Yesterday, you wanted to debate me on the merits of libertarianism, and you didn't even know about the non-aggression principle. Like this was the first time you had heard that, and now, but yet you thought you were prepared to debate rather than, hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you about that. It was, it was.
Well, they don't approach in good faith, and I don't want to make it sound like it's only one side of the political spectrum that does this, but I've seen it. There was a clip. It was PragerU was on campus, and the student called the campus security to have them removed for some reason, and they said, we're just asking questions. And he said, no, you're not. I know what you guys are all about. And they said to him, I'm paraphrasing, but what are we all about? And he said, I could think of a million things. And they said, okay, can you name one of them? Well, I don't have the time. So it's all this weird, it's this thing where they have to belittle and insult you. But you say to them, well, just tell me what it is that you think I believe in. And then they mention some absurd boogeyman. There was a comic I was friends with, and we were all out after an open mic, and we went to the diner, and this was before the election, and two Jewish mothers said that they were voting for Trump, and they explained why, and he just casually announced that we were all white supremacists, and we were profoundly disturbed by that. And then he wants to know why we don't want to hang out anymore. And it's like, you can't just call me a white, because to me it was, all right, you're having some sort of emotional response here, because no one said anything that would warrant that.
Right.
And it's not true. But if you thought that was true, you wouldn't be whining that we don't want to hang out with you because we are white supremacists. So if you don't think it's true, then you were way out of line to say that. But this is another problem, Lou, I think we have, is confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance are the two biggest logical problems we're having now, where people think they can have two completely contradictory point of views at the same time. And no one is allowed to do that. You can't do that. And you can see sometimes where these people's brains start to get a cramp in them, where if you just ask them simple questions, they go berserk because it's too painful for them to face the possibility they may be incorrect. It's the same as if you were to show a radical Muslim a picture of Muhammad and say to them, well, why don't you just not worry about it? It's just, they can't, it's too visceral for them. And I don't know how we got to this with politics, but it's very bad. And people won't let you say, well, I'm open to, no, they don't want any of that. They want the other side to be obliterated. And I hate to sound so negative about it, but I think we're heading for something very bad. We're at something bad now, and I think we're headed for something worse.
I was accused of being a white supremacist by two white people who are
they're the worst.
Who are definitive proof that there's no such thing as white supremacy, because they're just two of the fucking losers. Two losers. It's one of those things where it's like, like, oh, you have white privilege. When are you going to cash that shit in? Because homeboy, let me check out. So we have a Bobcat has a question. I think this is in regards to your concentric circles of weightlifting. Joe, do you have an opinion on Chuck Palahniuk, the author of Fight Club? So
I think he's in there. I liked Fight Club. I didn't like Choke quite as much, but I think he's one of the names that pops up. I think those. I think you even see a writer like Bret Easton Ellis, and you see him getting interviewed by Dave Rubin and all these former lefty liberals. And I think creative people don't like being told what to do. And the people, when I was growing up, the squares were, the Republicans, and they were the style crampers. But now, I've seen it mentioned, people say, if you're on the same side as the media, the government, and the entertainment industry, how do you think you're a rebel? So I think now, just, to have a contrary opinion, you're going against all of that stuff. And it's good to go against. Sometimes it's good to go against and have no alternative that you're presenting. Sometimes I think it's good to, if you will, rage against the machine. And I don't mean the band showing up in their limos playing their shitty funk stuff. You know, you've got to be prepared to push back.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this for a little while, and you know, we're at a time where identity is so important, you know, and the personal is political and all that, and one of the things that when I'm talking to people, you know, one of the things that I have to talk about with my identity, which I think is probably one of the most important things, is that I'm a comedian, that I'm a writer, that this stuff pops into my head, these thoughts, and I have to decide what to do with them. You know, do I let this one go, or do I write it down? Like, ooh, I'm going to write this one down. This sounds interesting, or this is a little naughty. Let's see where this can go. And you know, you were talking about coming up at a time when, you know, irreverency was what, you know, comedy was a big part of comedy. And it's sort of like, in a way, it's sort of comedy as a mental illness. and it's sort of like, wait a minute, you are discriminating against me by saying that I can't do what my brain is telling me to do. And it's not even actions, it's just ideas and words coming out there. Let's see. Okay, we have Jeff Creedon has a question. What is the best deer in the headlight breaker for a comedian that gets up and freezes on stage?
Oh, probably not going to like the answer, but it's to get on stage a million times. It's to just keep getting on stage. I used to have such bad nerves that I would throw up before even open mics. And you know, I always tell people what cured me was the comedy club bathrooms are so disgusting that I didn't even want to be throwing up in their toilets. So you just have to do it over and over and over again. Because when I started, I didn't know that. So I was getting on stage maybe once a month, and I found that every time it was that same feeling over and over again, of these horrible, horrible nerves. And, you know, I think there's a phrase in acting, they say self-consciousness is the enemy of art. And you have to learn to not be self-conscious. But the way you do that is you just do the same jokes over and over again. You push through. And I think one of the big moments for me was the first time I was on stage, was within my first year of stand-up. And I realized that I was speaking, but I wasn't thinking, what do I say next at the same time? The only way you get like that is you have to tell these jokes millions of times, thousands of times, you know, and there have even been jokes where before a show I've said to myself, all right, I'm planning to tell this one particular joke. I just can't do it again. And then I tell the joke and it gets a big laugh. And in my head, I'm like, that's a pretty good joke. So I think that's, Jeff, I think that's how you would push through it, you know, is you have to tell these jokes over and over again, but you have to have a plan. You know, you can't just go up. People go up and they think the magic is just going to happen. You know, the more prepared you can be, every time you go on stage, you should have some sort of desired outcome, whether it's, I'm going to run the set, I'm going to work on getting over stage fright, I'm going to just do new stuff, but write it down, you know, write down what your goal is for that set. And then afterward, look at it and say, did I achieve it? Because then if you achieved what you set out to do and nobody laughed, it's still a win.
Brian has a question for me. Lou, has your comedy always had a political edge to it, or did you do regular jokes first? If so, why the pivot? Yeah, I think the first two political videos that I did. So I was doing a two-man sketch comedy with my partner Greg Burke. So it was Greg and Lou. And we would do a lot of dark comedy. We would do a lot of parody. We parodied like Die Hard. We would did a video called Wolverine's Claws Suck. So we enjoyed doing that. We're both like kids of the 80s. So we love doing like action movie parodies and that sort of thing. And I think it was right when Obama was running for his second term. The political video that I did for that was, you know, we don't need Obama for just 4 more years. We need Obama for 4,000 more years. And it was just like, these are all the terrible things that can go wrong that Obama will protect us from, whether it's AIDS goes airborne and we need him, you know. So that was like my first, you know, my dip toe into you know, into political, you know, comedy. And then the other one that I did after that was a video called I'll do the setup. So in California, they were pushing for affirmative consent on college campuses, meaning when two people were going to have sex, they would need verbal affirmative consent in order for it to be consensual. You know, so the idea being, is it okay if I kiss you? Yes, it's okay if you kiss me. Can I go down on you? Yes, you can go down.
So at every step of the way, you had to constantly check in.
Yeah, every step of the way. So I had the idea of, well, you know, even if that's the law, it's still going to come down to he said, she said, you know, afterwards. So what they would probably need to do is hire a dorm room sex notary to be in the room, basically checking off, watching the whole time. And so I did. So we made that video, submitted it to. There was a contest at Reason TV, and it was like one of the finalists. And it was around that time that I started working with We the Internet, where they were looking to do political and cultural comedy. And I'm like, well, you know, I happen to be a libertarian, but I've been doing sketch comedy for 13 years. And then it was sort of like, you know, bringing it all together. And early on with those videos that I was doing, you know, I'd write a script, I'd be very happy with it. And then I would think, oh man, you know, are the actors going to be comfortable doing this stuff? Because it's pretty amazing, you know, if you look around at the work that actors do, where you're like, oh my God, that's pretty out there, you know, depending on the subject matter. And you know, that fear of, oh man, I really don't want to have that awkward interaction of an actor saying, I'll do this, but you have to get rid of these lines, you know? So it got to the point where it's like, well, I'm comfortable with this stuff. I perform. I might as well just step up and do it. So that was sort of my, you know, evolution into the, you know, political bent of comedy. So let's see.
It's
Bobcat.
hard to avoid.
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, go. Yeah.
I used to do a lot of jokes, if I look back at videos from 10 years ago, about current events. And you didn't have to take a political position to make fun of, you know, Elliot Spitzer or Sarah Palin. You could just do jokes about it. Or some weird thing I saw in the news. And I really miss it, because now I can't even talk about some weird thing with an animal somebody found, and then that becomes political. It's very annoying, because sometimes I just want to talk about weird shit that's out in the world. So,
right. Bobcat, speaking of weird shit, Bitcoin conference was really uplifting, especially with regards to decentralization and how it's helpful for the world. Joe, have you been paid in Bitcoin yet? Does anyone?
I haven't yet. I mean, a lot of places that I, you know, work with, just to get them to pay with Venmo is, you know, like asking them to use the transporter on Star Trek. They're a little bit, have an older audience. I did see a little bit of the clip of Tim Dillon at the conference in Miami.
Yeah, I think I saw the same one. Yeah.
Just him being his usual ridiculous, fearless self.
Yeah.
He's one of the guys I really like now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My only claim to fame with Tim is years ago. I mean, we're talking maybe like over 10 years ago. There used to be a show in Great Neck, Long Island, at a fondue restaurant. I don't know if you played this. I
don't think so, but I think I've heard of it. Remember the name?
It was, I think, Peter Velios, if I'm getting Peter's last name.
I remember this one, yeah.
And let me just take this one for a sec. So Tim was booked on that show. So I got up there, and one of the things I just sort of riffed, and I was like, oh, I just saw, the saddest sight of my life. I saw a man eating fondue alone, and and then I got up and I did my set, and and when Tim got up, and Tim was, fairly new to stand up, he did not let me get away with that. He got up and just started. He's like, I forget what he was saying, but it was like, "How dare you?" How dare you? and started shitting all over me. um, and it was great. And I mean, from the get go, I mean, he was Tim Dillon. He was, uh, loud and funny, and also a weird guy to peg, because it was like, what is it? He's a gay guy, gay Republican from Long Island, and and all that. But yeah, he's been doing fantastic, and it's nice to see him do so well. The Board Observer says, y'all hear about Anthony Jeselnik sharing an article stating that comedy has an alt-right problem, caused quite a stir between comedians and agenda comedians. I really like that term, agenda comedians.
With the capitalizations, yes, he's coined the phrase there. Yeah. I saw some of it. I think a lot of it was coming off that weirdo Seth Simmons, who's always writing these exposés of things that seem to only exist in the confines of his mind. Comedy does not have an alt-right problem. I don't think anything has an alt-right problem. I don't think the alt-right is anything for people to worry about. It's a boogeyman. There's so much creative license these people take, where if they see someone go up and make an obnoxious joke, they then have to extrapolate it into some. I guess what you hear a lot now, where someone will hear a joke and say, well, you can't tell that joke. You say, well, why not? Well, it could lead to, and then already it's like, now you're talking bullshit, because no one has ever gone out and harmed someone because they heard a comedian tell a joke. But the response is from a person who can't manage their own emotions. So what they have to say is, they can't just say, it hurt my feelings. They have to say, it's going to result in the committing of a crime. Now, when I mentioned earlier about the bending of language, you hear that in the way people say, you've committed an act of violence by saying that. Well, that's not what violence means. But if you can say someone's committed an act of violence against you, then you can punch them in the head. Then you can throw something at them and burn their house. You've given yourself license by doing that. Mm-hmm. So by saying things like comedy has an alt-right problem, it accomplishes a couple of very bullshitty things. None of them are good. And especially this little Rich coming from Jeselnik, who made his bones writing the most offensive jokes he could think of, which were funny. A lot of them were very funny. I'm not going to take that away from him. But to then say this, it's like, give me a break.
Yeah, it has been weird, seeing comedians like Jeselnik come around, and it's sort of like, what's going on there? Like, I wonder, have they had like a real change of heart? Is it the equivalent of, a painter, going to his studio and seeing all of his easels with all of his paintings that he said, and he's like, no, this is done. This can't, see the light of day anymore. This is not who I am. And then tosses his own work onto the fire, because it seems like, any of the apologies for the past, it doesn't come with, I feel really bad about making money doing this.
They never give that part back. And also, I think they never extend the courtesy to newer people who are maybe in that same phase of their career. No one ever says, well, I said some really inappropriate things, but now I've evolved. Please forgive me. But let's continue to punish other people who are now in that set of circumstances. I don't know what makes that happen. I think it could be because people would rather have anything happen than admit that they were wrong. People just want to be right. And when you hang out with people who all have a certain point of view, and everyone's telling you you're smart and you're great, and you get used to that, maybe that's as close to belief in something as you can get. That if you hang out with everyone with one point of view, it starts to become your deeply felt point of view.
Mm-hmm. Recently, a friend of mine, he messaged me on Facebook, and he's like, hey man, he's like, you don't have to take part in this conversation that's going on this Facebook post, but it's kind of hilarious, and you should come over there. So I went over just to have a look at it, and it was an argument that I've heard before. The idea being, conservatives fail at comedy because liberals have empathy, and in order for comedy to work, you need empathy. And when it comes to quote unquote conservative comedy, what I sort of found was I never considered myself a conservative comedian, but depending on which video of mine someone was watching, they would be like, "Oh, typical conservative comedy," or "Conservatives suck." Lou Perez is just a conservative idiot. And then I found myself sort of defending conservative comedy, where I'm like, that's not even who I am. Like, and also like, what's conservative about it? Like what is conservative? I don't know, but if you have insights,
it's strange. I used to see that after Red Eye appearances, where I would make the mistake of looking at some of the bulletin boards, or that's what it was back then, or the comment sections, where someone would say, for the same thing that I said, one comment would say, "You liberal homo Jew," whatever. They would go through their list, and the next comment would be, "You Nazi right wing." And I think, wow, how can two different people have completely polar opposite opinions of some silly joke that I said? So it makes me realize perhaps it's not me. Perhaps it is an internal struggle they're having. But yeah, you're right. I don't understand. Well, that idea that it's because people on the left have empathy. They can stop patting themselves on the back for that. But they certainly don't like it when you say, well, you need conservatives to run the business. I think there's definitely like the hemispheres of the brain that the creative mind is better at coming up with the ideas, but not great at implementing them. Whereas you need the people who are good at implementing, but maybe you are a little bit drier in that way. That's why people need to work together, but no one wants to do that part.
Yeah, I was talking about this with my friend Boris Hyken, and Boris made a good point. He's sort of like, when somebody's looking to get into stand-up comedy, especially at the beginning, you can't raise a family on an open micer's salary, because oftentimes it's, you're in debt, because it's like, especially in New York, it's like, okay, $5 to get up, and then you have to buy a drink sometimes, and that you're often paying money in order to get up on a mic and to perform. And so there are people of different mindsets who are like, wait a minute, there's a lot of sacrifice to doing stand-up. There's a lot of time that I'm going to put into this, and it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that I'm going to make it in stand-up.
It's a terrible idea.
It's as opposed to if I get my license to be a plumber, my license to be an engineer, or any other career path, it's, I know how much it costs to get the training. I have a good idea of what I'm going to get out. I'm of the mindset where, I'd rather be, have my future a little on more, solid ground than sort of up in the air with comedy. So there is something, there. I made a joke a while back where when people say, why are there so few conservative comedians? And I said, same reason there's so few women comedians. Same exact reason, man.
Yeah. It's not a hospitable environment. I don't begrudge anyone who tries it and decides to move on. It's not for everyone, and it takes a lot out of you. Now there are people who've stuck around after I think every other sign in the world was telling them to give up. Sometimes I don't know what keeps them going, but who knows? Sometimes those people getting their own thing out of it. The people I think kind of irritate me are the ones who, I call them, the guys who go straight to bitter. They go directly to complaining, and you wonder, like, well, what did you think you were promised, or what do you think your act warrants? You know what word I've decided I don't want to hear anymore? Deserve. You got to get rid of the word deserve, because you either earned something or you got lucky. But deserve, it implies that somehow Providence is supposed to bestow something upon you because of other things you did, and no one deserves anything. You either fulfilled an obligation and busted your ass, or you got lucky. But and I see so many comics who think. I used to see this when I would run like a little bar show. All the crazy comics would come by already pissed that I hadn't booked them, because they thought, well, here's a comedy show. I do comedy, therefore I should get booked. I deserve that. I said, no, you don't deserve anything. Get out of here, you nut job. No one. That's something for the beginning comics here. You will sleep much better the moment you realize no one is under any obligation to book you or advance your career. Once you let that go, almost all the things you're worried about will be gone, because there are people who worry about nothing besides that.
Yeah. And also with it's so easy to allow yourself to become bitter when you're seeing your peers doing well.
Yeah.
Right. And it's something that, over the past however many months, say like the last year, I've had to remind myself, like, no, hold on. Your friend who's doing really well worked really hard to get where they're not only are they incredibly talented, but they're working really hard. And where a lot of people were sitting on their asses with that idea of that entitlement, especially, over during the lockdown. I think I remember having a conversation, I think it was with you and Andrew, just about, this is a big test for a lot of people to see how they come out of it.
Yeah.
Especially on the comedy front, because someone I bring up all the time is my friend Chrissy Mayer. I mean, Chrissy grinded, man. Like how many podcasts she was, doing every week, and look at her. She's touring around the country. She's got shows all over the place. She's doing great. And you know what? Instead of, for the people out there who, might say, oh, she doesn't deserve all that. No, she deserves it. And even if she didn't, she made it happen. Yeah. And she's getting after it. And that's crucial. So important.
And she did all that operating at a loss for a couple of years, which is that a logical business decision? No, but she did what she had to do. And I don't remember ever hearing Chrissy complain. She just took it as what you needed to do, and she enjoyed the fun that she had. And then, she's really great. I was listening to one of her podcasts where she was talking to Casey Aurora, and I was out walking listening to it. And I'm friends with both of them, and I thought I could call either of them right now, but I'm enjoying listening to the two of them have a conversation. I feel like I'm really listening to friends of mine talk, and she's a great interviewer.
Yeah.
Now, how did she get that way? Because she did a lot of shit for free to build up her skills. Right. Now, when did you start doing stand-up?
I think the first time I got up to do a set, I was 27 or 28. So about 11 years, I think. Okay.
I'm going to be at this next month. It's going to be 20 years.
20 years.
20. Wow. I can't believe it. And I remember at the time when I started thinking, I'm so old to be trying this. And then here I am 20 years later. But yeah, it is. Oh, shit. I forgot my train of thought on that. Chrissy trying it. And then. Oh, I think what helped me was when I started, comedy was not a cool thing to do. It was after the last of the 80s boom had died out. It was very like if you told people you did stand up, they were like, ugh, they're like, what's wrong with you? It wasn't. And in a way, it was good because there was no expectations for me to have other than I thought it was interesting. My friends talked me into it, and it was an outlet for some creativity that I wasn't expressing elsewhere. And I think that's good because then I noticed probably about 10 years ago, I would see people showing up at open mics already talking about comedy as if it were a business plan. And I think we see that now where what the industry is doing is if you come in and they're able to check off a certain number of boxes on you, the same kind of people they would reject previously for those boxes being checked, now they're seeking you out. And none of it has anything to do with anyone being funny.
Interesting. Let's see. Bobcat Wolfenstein says, your opinion and position is as important as anyone else. That's the idea behind what we're trying to do as a country. Yes?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I suppose so.
I think it was Kevin D. Williamson over at National Review. He said, when it comes to, social media, he's like, under circumstances without social media, 99% of the people probably shouldn't be airing their opinions. But now with social media, 100% of the people can air their opinions. Yeah. But I think it's the it's the give and take of it. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed, especially with people that I follow on Twitter, there are quite a few people who started following me. And then I start seeing like, oh my God, they're funnier than a lot of the comedians I follow. And they're not comedians. They're civilians. They have, they have their regular jobs, and then they get on and they have nice one-liners and goofs, and they go about their day, and they have no, they have no aspirations of doing what we do. And in a way, it's like, oh man, the world is a little worse off because you don't want to, do more with this. But then it's like, it might not be necessarily the same if you were trying to get after it and trying to pursue that. Let's do. Can I have you for just like another 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Let's see. Bobcat says, "Can we talk about Israel?" I don't know, man. I don't know if we can talk about Israel.
Don't know if I'm qualified for that one.
Yeah. David says, "What's conservative about making fun of oneself?" Yeah. What is conservative about that?
I guess you'd have to clarify for me what conservative means in that context.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the word conservative. It's so funny we live in a time where identity is so important that people seem to be making up identity, monikers, left and right. And then it's sort of so many people who I know, as liberals, traditional liberals or classical liberals, have been pushed over to the conservative side without saying, yeah, I'm conservative. They've just sort of been, well, you
the center
this, so
has moved so much that, opinions that were considered, downright radical a couple of years ago are considered passé now. So I don't know if I could say what conservative means in that sense. I do know that I don't even like to say liberal, because I have friends of mine who are essentially leftists or collectivists at this point. And there's nothing particularly liberal in the classical sense about what they say. I think Dave Rubin says he's classical liberal. And people like Jordan Peterson would say they're classical liberals. And, and what do they get for their trouble? People are burning them in effigy. So, yeah, I don't know what I would say. What's conservative about making fun of yourself? That's a good question. I will say this. I am moving away from self-deprecating material because I found after the years of doing that, not only did I not like the way it was making me regard myself. I'll tell you a little story. A couple years ago, when I was running the Dry Bar special, I worked this little theater in the Catskills. And after the show, we went out for some drinks in this little town. And this beautiful young woman at the bar came over and sat with us and was talking to us. And it took me a couple minutes to realize, oh, she's interested in me. Because she was, again, I'm doing it. I'm doing the self-deprecating thing. Why wouldn't I think that? But it's kind of the default setting. So she had told me something very interesting. She said, you're very funny, but you need to change the way you talk about yourself on stage. And as a comic, hearing that from someone who's not a performer, of course, I was like, what do you mean? And she said, you talk about yourself like you're an old man, but you're not. And she said, if you were, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. She said, you will be someday, but that's not the way we see you on stage. And it stunned me.
Yeah.
Because I do all this material about getting older, and I thought, she's right. I'm not an 80-year-old man. So what is it I'm really trying to say? And what I learned from it was, my story is not that I'm an old man. It's that I'm afraid. Now think about how much deeper and richer a thing that is to talk about. Instead of going up and saying my back hurts, it's more like, this is really a thing that's affecting me. So she saw something that I was not seeing myself. And my jokes were doing fine. But having learned that, there's a richness in it. And that vulnerability I was able to tap into. Yeah. So that may be...
Are you still in? Are you still in touch with her?
No, unfortunately, I kind of let that opportunity lapse because of distance, and also I was quite a bit older than her, and I felt like this would be a little bit hard for me to justify dating a woman half my age. So of course, I look back now and I'm like, what the hell? Why didn't you just? Because she was, sometimes I have to say that if you find there are some young women today that are very, very wise. I remember what I was like when I was 26. I was a complete imbecile. I think I still had long hair, for God's sake. But she got me on. She got me on that one because I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then she explained it, and I was like, "I think she's right."
Yeah, and I think it's so crucial too for for people in all walks of life, whether you're a comedian or just in your day to day, to have people come up to you and tell you the truth. Which is like exactly like she like she said, and I have that quite often with confidence in myself. And my wife will tell me, she's like, you're talking like you haven't accomplished a lot, you know? And she's like, I need to remind you about, all that you've accomplished. And with the self-deprecation thing too, I think with comedians, I've done material on stage where it's been like self-deprecating, and then I get off stage, and what's bad is when you have audience members who think because you made fun of yourself that they can get away with making fun of you. And it's like, no, that shit doesn't work. It took me a while to be able to make that joke, and to craft it. And I'm not going to
strangers roasting you on your walk to I'll tell you where I've seen that is in my comedy classes. I had one where this young woman went up, and I guess she used to be heavy, but we didn't know that. And she was talking about herself like she was the most unattractive, unfuckable piece of, and her jokes were okay. I mean, they were well-written jokes, but when she was done, I said to her, that's not how we see you. You're a beautiful young woman. Like, you can't do that to yourself. And not just because it's not good for you. We don't connect with that.
Right.
It's like if I were to go up, I used to be heavier. And I remember I was doing some jokes about that. And after a show, several fat guy comics surrounded me who had fat guy acts. And they said, you can't, no. That's our thing. They said, you're not fat enough to do fat guy jokes.
Oh my God. Right. I'm thinking, who was it? Was it John Panetta?
Panetta, yeah.
I mean, that guy was, his material was just hilarious. Yeah. Joe, before I let you go, where can people find your stuff? We got Joe DeVito Comedy. You can follow him on Twitter. You can follow him on Instagram.
Yeah, and I put up my little jokes here and there. It's so strange to, at joedevito.com to realize I have to update my schedule again. The gigs are coming in. So people are watching this right now, obviously. This weekend I'll be at the Comedy Cove in Springfield, New Jersey.
Nice.
And then next weekend I'll be at McGuire's Comedy Club here on Long Island, where I live. And I'm going to update that calendar. But if anybody wants to reach out to me through social media, is fine. And I do the comedy coaching. I don't really do the group classes that much anymore because I'm kind of pressed for time. But I've helped a lot of comics find their voice and really work on their writing techniques. And it's a lot of fun for both of us too. So if anybody is interested in that, just reach out to me through my website and I'll give you some details.
That's awesome. And normally, Joe was teaching in the city, people local to New York, but now with Zoom, wherever you guys are, you guys can make it happen. So that's awesome. Joe, thank you so much for joining me, man. I'm going to stay on for another 15 minutes or so. Check out Joe's stuff. And thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Right on. Thanks, man. I'll see you soon.
See you. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed Joe DeVito. And like I said, I'm going to be here for another 15 minutes or so. If you have any questions for me in particular, let me know. Let's see. We need some positivity right there. Brian said, great show, guys. I appreciate that, Brian. Thank you. Jeff says, thanks, guys. Thank you. Appreciate that. David says, awesome. I love the dry bar special. Thanks for the amazing insight. Right on. Cool. All right. Maybe I won't go 15 more minutes. So again, for those of you guys tuning in, I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank Brian for whatever this message is. Was there a real person who was an inspiration for the Doug Allen bit? That's a good question, Brian. I developed that character with a comedy writer named Luke Spallino. And Luke was originally, he was interning with We the Internet. And with that, he would, be there on shoot days. And then he would also be a part of the writer's room. So Luke had the idea of a comedian who basically, was thought that he was so brave for taking on Trump, but it turns out, everybody was taking on Trump. So I worked on that character with him. I think I may have come up with Doug Allen. Luke, if he's watching, could correct me on that. So I don't know if it was necessarily based on one person in particular, as opposed to, I think just a lot of kind of cocky, untalented comics that I had, sort of been around, people who got the confidence before they got the material, or got the confidence before they got, the stage presence. But yeah, Doug Allen is a very, very fun character to play. I sort of had a vision of Doug Allen after Biden's win, sort of being on the Brooklyn Bridge and having a final moment like Inspector Javert in Les Mis, and singing a song about how edgy he was before plummeting to his death, because now that Trump is out of the White House, his work here is done. His work on this planet. Cool. Jeff says, we got Joe's schedule. What's yours? Yeah, I'm going to be updating my schedule soon. If you guys go to thelouperez.com, I have some dates coming up. One of them that I'm really excited about is I'm going to be at Freedom Fest this year in South Dakota. So if any fans out there from South Dakota, if you're coming to Freedom Fest, I'd love to see you there. If you have any recommendations on where to go, what to check out, we already got Mount Rushmore planned. Let me know. I'm actually going to bring my wife and our child and our little boy. So it's a mix of family outing and libertarian bacchanal. So that's going to be fun. And then in October, I'm going to be playing an event for Students for Liberty down in Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And look, wherever you guys are, if you want to put a show together, hit me up. I know comics. We can make it happen. Let's see. David says, Lou, Norm MacDonald called me and told me to ask, so where do you get your ideas? I saw that supercut with, was it Adam Egget, asking everybody who's been a guest on Norm MacDonald, so where do you get your ideas? It's a go-to question, and I've definitely gotten it a lot. It's one of those questions where it's like if you go on a date, a first date, and you run out of shit to talk about. So you start asking each other, so do you have any tattoos? It seems like one of those questions. Let's see. Jeff's asked, when is your next video skit? It looks like I'm going to be releasing the next one sometime next week. And just to give you a taste, it's called Trump Therapy. And it's a series of 3 videos that also work together as one short film. So we're going to be releasing that, and I think I'm going to premiere it on my locals, thelouperez.locals.com. I'm going to premiere it there, have it up there for a little while, and then release it to the rest of the world. And like I told you guys, in the coming months, I'm going to be working on a book. And so I'm going to be logging off from most social media. I'm still up in the air on whether or not I'm going to do some more Ask Me Anythings along the way. But with that, I'm going to be spending a lot of my time on locals.com, just updating everybody with the process. And the book I'm writing is about comedy, its current state. So if you guys have, ideas or things you think I should touch upon, hit me up over at locals and let me know and take part in the conversation, so I could really use your help on that front. That would be wonderful. Let's see. Do we have anything else? Let's see. All right. It looks like that's about it. All right, guys. I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight for my Ask Me Anything. And of course, I want to thank my guest, Joe DeVito. Go check out Joe DeVito Comedy. He's fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed what we did here tonight. And yeah, until then, bye.